1944. The waves of the North Sea crashed violently against the shores of Normandy, France. On one side, Adolf Hitler's unstoppable Atlantic Wall. On the other, 15 nations united under General Eisenhower. But the fate of this war was not in the hands of any general. It rested on the fingertips of one man, a Spaniard sitting in a dark room in London, typing the most dangerous lie in history. If Nazi Germany had known that their most trusted agent, Arabelle, was actually a British double agent known as Garbo, the world map today might have been very different. But who was Juan Pujol García? How did a simple chicken farmer with no training become one of history's greatest deceivers? Today, we uncover his unbelievable story. Juan was born in 1912 in Barcelona, a city by the Mediterranean where industry and political unrest collided. His family was a battlefield of ideas. His father, a textile factory owner who believed in reason, in liberal values, and in questioning everything. He wanted his children to grow up in a world where asking questions was freedom. At the dinner table, he spoke of workers' rights, of democracy, and of progress. And it was this way of thinking that shaped Juan, giving him the ability to deceive through logic. But the other side was far more rigid. Juan's mother was a deeply devout Catholic, strict and unwavering. To her, life meant absolute obedience to faith and to the church. Where his father believed in reason, his mother believed in devotion. From a very young age, Juan watched as his father and mother clashed at the dinner table with completely opposite beliefs. That environment gave him something rare, the ability to survive in between two extremes. He learned how to adapt at just 7 years old. While in boarding school, he couldn't tolerate the rigid authority and ran away. By 13, working in a hardware shop, he discovered something unusual, a different way to learn language. He realized people don't buy information, they buy emotion. 1936, the air of Spain was filled with the smell of gunpowder. One of the bloodiest civil wars in history had begun. On one side, the nationalists led by General Franco. On the other, the Republicans, loyal to the government. This chapter of Juan's life was more intense than any film. He was forcibly recruited into the Republican forces. But what awaited him there was tragedy. His crime, his family background. His father was a factory owner. And to the Republicans, that made him an enemy, a bourgeois without trial. Juan was thrown into a dark cell. There, he endured both mental and physical torture. Finally, after being released from prison, Juan found himself in a strange and dangerous situation. The same Republicans who once imprisoned him now expected him to fight for them. In 1938, he saw his chance and escaped, crossing mountains and harsh terrain. He made his way to the enemy's side, General Franco's nationalist camp. He believed perhaps he would finally find freedom. But once again, fate turned against him because of his past. With the Republicans, Franco's officers looked at him with suspicion. To them, he was a Red, a traitor. They beat him brutally, again and again, until one officer struck him so violently that something inside him broke forever. From that moment, Juan lost all faith in the military. He realized both sides were the same. One punished him for his father's wealth, the other for his past. No matter where he went, he was never free. This was the turning point of Juan's life. He began to understand something far more disturbing. That ideology does not make a man human. It turns him into something else, something darker. He wrote in his journal, "One side was cruel, the other was even worse. This war did not make him a patriot. It did not give him purpose. Instead, it transformed him into something far more dangerous. A master of survival. He learned how to survive of the Second World War by standing between enemies, playing both sides just to stay alive. He realized if you want to survive, you cannot trust anyone. Instead, you must tell people the lies they want to hear and use it to your advantage." In 1939, when the war finally ended, there was nothing left inside him. No emotion, no attachment. He saw something clearly. When people become blind to ideology, they become easy to deceive. So he made a decision. He would become something else, something beyond nations, beyond borders, an identity with only one purpose. In his eyes, there was only hatred against fascism, against dictatorship, and that hatred gave him the courage to enter the most dangerous game of the Second World War. 1941, Europe was burning. Nazi Germany had conquered one country after another. They had become what seemed unstoppable. And in the middle of this chaos, Juan Pujol García made a decision. He would enter the war, not with weapons, but with his mind. At first, he approached the British. He made them an offer. He wanted to work for them as a spy, but the British didn't take him seriously. To them, Juan was nothing. No military training, no intelligence experience, no network, just an ordinary Spanish man with nothing but confidence. So they rejected him and turned him away. But rejection did not break him. Instead, it gave him clarity. If the British would not take him, then he would do something that would force them to come to him. So he made a move, a dangerous one. He walked into the German embassy in Madrid and presented himself as something else. A loyal fascist, anti-British, ready to serve the Nazis. He claimed he had contacts in Britain, that he could go there and gather information with ease. The German intelligence, Abwehr, was not fully convinced, but they saw potential. So they gave him what he needed: codes, invisible ink, instructions, and a mission. Go to England and begin. But Juan never went to England. Instead, he went to Lisbon, Portugal, a place where both sides of the war passed through, where fragments of information floated everywhere. Inside a public library, Juan began, in an unbelievable act, pieces of information scattered everywhere. And from those fragments, he built something impossible. An entire Britain inside his mind. He wrote his reports as if he was walking through the streets of London, observing everything: the weather, the traffic, the behavior of people, even the conversations of soldiers. Every detail felt real. That was his genius. He didn't just create information. He created the feeling of reality. Slowly, he began to convince the Germans that he was not alone. Sub-agents spread across Britain, feeding him information. One of the most remarkable examples was almost absurd. He claimed that he was paying workers in Liverpool with 1 liter of wine in exchange for information. But in Britain, wine was not common among the working class. Beer was. It didn't make sense. And yet, the Germans never questioned it, because by then, they already believed, they trusted their new agent, the one they called Arabelle. And in their eyes, he was doing extraordinary work from inside Britain. And just like that, without ever setting foot in England, sitting inside a library in Lisbon, Juan Pujol García became one of the most effective agents inside Britain, at least in the eyes of Nazi Germany. They never realized that the man they trusted as their loyal spy was slowly leading them towards one of the greatest deceptions in history. Slowly, Juan began to understand something critical. Working alone as a single man was too risky, too exposed. The chances of being caught were too high, and worse, his information was not always convincing. So he made a decision, one of the boldest and strangest decisions in history. He did something no one had ever done before. Alone, he created an entire network, a ghost network, a fictional army of spies. One by one, he sent the Nazis a list. 27 agents, each with names, stories, personalities, only in his mind, inside his imagination. And yet, to German intelligence, the Abwehr, they were real. Not just real, but invaluable, living legends, working from inside Britain. Agent 4, a waiter in Gibraltar. Agent 7, a dock worker in Glasgow. Agent 9, a British Air Force officer. Each one had a life, a story, a purpose. Some were addicted to gambling, desperate for money, willing to betray for survival. Others had sick families, selling information just to pay for treatment. And some were driven by something else, resentment, anger towards the British government. And so they chose the other side. These small emotions, these weaknesses, became Juan's greatest weapon. He wasn't just writing intelligence reports. He was writing 27 different lives, each one with a different story, a different voice, a different way of speaking, different handwriting, different personalities. Juan didn't just create stories. He created a living world, and the Germans believed it completely. They trusted it as truth, so much so that they began paying salaries to all 27 agents regularly, the equivalent of nearly £30,000 every month. The money sent by the Nazis. Instead, it went directly into the hands of British intelligence, MI5. Germany was funding its own defeat, and behind it all, controlling the board, was just one man with nothing but his imagination. Juan proved something extraordinary, that on the battlefield, what thousands of soldiers cannot achieve, a single well-crafted lie can. June 6th, 1944. The fate of the world hung by a thread. The Allied forces were preparing for the largest amphibious invasion in history. Operation Overlord. The target, the shores of Normandy. The Allies knew if the Germans discovered the truth that the invasion would land in Normandy, millions of lives would be lost before they even reached the shore. So they needed something else, a deception. Working alongside his British handler, Thomas Harris, Juan began one of the most cunning operations in history, Operation Fortitude. Juan had one objective: to plant a permanent illusion inside Adolf Hitler's mind, to make him believe that Normandy was nothing more than a diversion, a distraction. The real invasion would come somewhere else, 150 miles to the northeast, across the narrow English Channel, at a place called Pas de Calais. Was the greatest twist. This entire army did not exist. It was all an illusion, a perfect deception. On the ground, the British began an extraordinary act. They built thousands of inflatable tanks. From a distance or through German reconnaissance aircraft, it looked real, a massive army ready for war. But in truth, it was nothing more than air and lies. And it didn't stop there. They built empty military camps, fake pipelines, even wooden landing crafts. Everything designed to deceive the eye. But the illusion went even further. On the airwaves, another game had begun. Thousands of fake military messages were being transmitted. Signals, movements, all carefully crafted to convince the Germans that a massive force was gathering in the southeast of England, preparing for war. At the center of this entire illusion was Juan Pujol García. He controlled every detail, every movement, every report. He described everything to the Nazis, what the soldiers were eating, the badges on their uniforms, even when generals held their meetings. All of it written with precision, as if he was there, watching, observing from within. His reports were so precise, so convincing that German intelligence, the Abwehr, trusted him completely, blindly. And when those reports reached Hitler's desk, he would study the maps, analyze the positions, and come to one conclusion: the invasion would strike at Pas de Calais. The result? Hitler held back his most powerful panzer divisions, right where he believed the real attack would come. And in that moment, the true invasion had already begun. In Normandy, Juan didn't just provide information, he created an illusion so powerful that even Hitler could not see through it. So deep was Hitler trapped in Juan's web of lies that even when thousands of Allied ships gathered off the coast of Normandy, he refused to believe it. To him, it was still a deception, a distraction, not the real attack. Under his command, Germany's most powerful forces, the 15th Army and the feared panzer divisions, stood still, frozen in Pas de Calais, waiting for an invasion that would never come. But when the truth finally became clear, it was already too late. By then, the Allied forces had secured their position on the beaches of Normandy. The path to victory was already open, and the fall of Nazi Germany was no longer a question, only a matter of time. And at that very moment, history delivered one of its greatest ironies. July 1944, Nazi Germany awarded Juan Pujol García its highest military honor, the Iron Cross, approved by Hitler himself. They believed that their agent, Arabelle, had helped protect Germany from certain destruction by feeding them valuable intelligence. They had no idea that the man they were honoring was the very reason for their downfall. Just a few months later, in the British Royal Palace, King George VI honored Juan with the title MBE. And in that moment, history recorded something extraordinary. Juan Pujol García became the only man to receive honors from both sides of the same war. To the Nazis, he was their most trusted savior. But to the British, he was something else. A weapon, the most effective, secret weapon that helped bring down Hitler's empire. The same man, the same actions, but to each side, a completely different meaning. Juan proved something history would never forget. War is not only won with blood and gunpowder. Sometimes a single is more powerful than thousands of cannons. And when those medals rested in his hands, perhaps he smiled, because deep down he knew no one had ever deceived the world better than him. After the war, Juan knew the danger was not over. The Nazis might still come for him, so he did what he did best. He disappeared. In 1949, a rumor spread that he had died in Angola from malaria. But it wasn't real. It was just another lie, another illusion. Juan had staged his own death. For the next 36 years, he lived as an ordinary man in Venezuela under a different name, George Ferrer. Even his wife never knew who he truly was until 1984, when a British journalist, Nigel West, finally found him, alive, hidden all along. And when he was asked why he took such a risk, he simply smiled and said, "I just wanted to see how much the world could be changed with a pen." 1988. In a quiet corner of Venezuela, George Ferrer took his final breath. A man the world knew as Juan Pujol García. His grave held no grand titles, no medals etched in stone, no signs of the war he changed. But history remembers something else, a truth that cannot be buried. Even today, the sands of Normandy still bear witness to that stormy night in 1944, when a few simple dots and dashes, crafted at the fingertips of an ordinary man from Spain, changed the map of the world. Juan held no weapon, no army, only a radio transmitter and a collection of carefully crafted lies. And yet, without ever standing on the battlefield, he became one of the most powerful warriors in history. The man Hitler believed was his savior was, in truth, the architect of his downfall. So, what did you think of today's story? Do you believe that someone like Juan could still exist today, living among us under a different identity? Let us know in the comments. In our next video, we'll uncover another unbelievable truth from the Second World War. So make sure to subscribe and stay with us. Thank you.